Manners from Heaven by Quentin Crisp. The first half of Chapter 8, The Wrong Stuff. You lose your manners when you're poor. Lillian Hellman, Another Part of the Forest. My home for the last 2 years has been in a rooming house on New York's East 3rd Street, at the edge of what the natives call the DMZ zone. If I lived any further east, I would have to travel to and from all social engagements in an armored vehicle. My bed-sitting room, at the top of the stairs on the 3rd floor, is decorated in a style which befits my station in life, early low-tech. I have a portable heater, a telephone, and a hot plate, all that I need to survive now that my life has become one long camping trip. I have no radio, because my interest in civil defense is minimal, and what else is the radio good for? I have no television set because I don't see why I, of all people, should pay to take unreality seriously. Visitors to my room often intimate that they find it cramped and suggest that I would be happier elsewhere, whereas I think that to have as much as 120 square feet in the heart, or rather, given my location, the kidney of Manhattan, is bliss, far beyond anything I dreamt for myself when I was young. Sometimes these same visitors look out of my one window, which faces another wing of the house, and ask me if I wouldn't prefer a better view. Only unimaginative people need a view, but I don't say so. I like walls, I tell them. There are few things in life more reassuring than a wall, especially a blank one. The wall I face is not perfect, however. There are 2 windows facing mine, so I do not escape reminders of other people. Sometimes, at night, any time after 11, when I am huddling under my only light bulb, a knock will come at my door, or a verbal demand will pass right through it from my neighbor complaining that he cannot get to sleep with my light shining in his eyes. To ask why he does not get a blind would be to raise the equally embarrassing question as to why I don't get one either. Rather than get embroiled in this rigmarole, for me the reason is that I don't see the point in investing in a blind, even one of Venetian quietude, when any day now I expect life's curtain to fall. I have taken to putting out my light promptly by 11 p.m. If I come in later than that, I undress in the dark, so as to spare my photosensitive neighbor any aggravation to his optic nerve. Living in proximity with other people requires that we consider their feelings, no matter how eccentric those feelings may seem to be, for that very eccentricity may be the essence of their identity. When my neighbor complains and I give way, or he notices that there is no longer any cause for offense, it may have little to do, in fact, with the alleged sleep-reducing glow of my own 60 water, which, after all, has to penetrate 2 window panes caked with soot before it impinges upon the retinas of his insomniacal eyes. It may be simply that he needs to exert his will and to savor the small victory of somebody obliging him. If something as little as the flick of a switch is enough to keep him docile, then I am perfectly willing to liaise. It could be much worse. I could be living next to a rock musician of the heavy metallurgical persuasion. I am often asked by people why I am so patient with my enemies. The reason is partly habit and partly strategy. Having been the butt of mockery and abuse almost from birth, I became well acquainted with humility and her twin, irony, even before my compulsory miseducation began in earnest. I would have died of exhaustion if I had tried to combat the treatment I received. Instead, I feigned not to be angry. This is the only method known to me by which one can survive one's emotions, and also feign not to have them. It works. I am now almost entirely free from indignation. Apart from my run-ins with the amorous bag lady, I can't remember the last time I answered back. Other cheekism is not only a way of purifying the soul, it is also part of every weak person's survival kit. If I had tried to defend myself in any of the street incidents of which in my youth I was the victim, I might easily have been killed. I seem now to be in less physical danger than formerly, but even when dealing with verbal harassment, the principle is the same. Anyone, even with the thinnest layer of cerebral cortex, will recognize that we generally accomplish far more in social relations when we disarm the opponent through charm rather than bopping him on the nose or boxing his ears with verbal crudities. Maintaining good manners is an emotionally taxing process. This is the principal reason why I live alone. The effort of constantly looking, saying, and doing my best, or even my second best, would consume more energy than I am capable of replenishing in a 24-hour period. My smile needs to have its battery recharged, otherwise I would start looking down at the mouth like other people. I have often been afforded the irresistible opportunity of sharing a flat with someone, merging my cast-iron pots with her copper-bottomed pans in hot pursuit of the joy of cooking. But I steadfastly refuse all offers of round-the-clock companionship. I need my time alone, and besides, one should always be wary of anyone who promises that their love will last longer than a weekend. I was asked one evening by a member of the audience what I thought of the idea of drawing up a contract at the onset of any relationship in which two people will live together. "If I understand you correctly," the man said, "you recommend being clear with people ahead of time so that all parties will know where they stand, rather than squabbling over everything when your wife or husband, lover or roommate, has lost that lovin' feelin'." "This is a very troubling area," I replied. "With some people, the only thing stronger than their lust is their greed, so that when they have tired of attacking our person, they take aim at our purse. A contract governing living arrangements may be of some help in limiting the claims of those who are so ill-mannered as to kiss and sue, but the growing reliance that all of us have on legal contracts of one sort or another, indeed, our reliance on lawyers generally, is an admission that neither we nor the people we profess to love and cherish can be trusted to be fair and equitable in the event of a parting of the ways. As there is no consensus about good manners, and no consensus about moral values, we depend more and more on the law for authority, though the law in many cases is the opposite of what is moral, and seldom fulfills the requirements of good manners. The law is simply expediency wearing a long white dress. In some counties, provinces, or states, Dame Justice wears a different cut of dress, and domestic delinquents are not above shopping around for whatever legal fashion best suits their designs. The law is resorted to mainly by unprincipled people, as they have no other basis of behavior. Good manners can never be coercive or coerced. You cannot demand courtesy from people. You cannot penalize someone for failing to have a cheerful disposition. Good manners are given to the world, freely, by enlightened choice. In a Kramer versus Kramer situation, only one Kramer can win, though both may be right, and certainly both have needs that a legal decision cannot satisfy. I generally regard anyone who conspires with a lawyer to create a lawsuit as someone who is making mischief for selfish reasons, and who cannot get all that he or she wants through more civilized means. If one is not a scoundrel to start with, one will certainly be one by the time the case is over. For a lawsuit requires that both parties conceal as much as they can that may damage their side, while revealing as much as possible that will embarrass the other side. This contest between people, now made adversaries, has nothing to do with the truth, and nothing to do with maintaining peaceful relations. So when I am asked for my opinion about marriage contracts, or contracts governing any intimate relationship, I fail to see the purpose of signing a piece of paper that it would be ungracious and unseemly for me ever to enforce. I do say, though, to those who want to hedge their vows of undying love with practical considerations, that one should never draw up a legal contract on one's own account with anybody. Rather, you must produce someone else who insists on it, blaming your father, or your brother, or your manager, or your agent, someone who insists on safeguarding your interests, while you yourself must be presented as being much too loving, much too spiritual, much too beautiful in nature to expect anything legal to be brought into the situation. There must not be any undignified squabble, even in private and certainly not in public, about finances or possessions, when you withdraw from a relationship, or when someone else withdraws. The only time that you are free to act like a born-again capitalist, announcing to the world that you prefer money to people, is before a relationship has begun. If you choose badly in your bedmates and companions, there is no responsible option but to pay the price, whatever that may be. I recommend having no relations except those easily born and disposed of. I recommend limiting one's involvement in other people's lives to a pleasantly scant minimum. This may seem too stoical a position in these madly passionate times, but madly passionate people rarely make good on their madly passionate promises. Few people seem to be able to conduct their personal relationships with much style or grace. Once you are past the first few bars of their overtures, it's the same old song and dance, the same step forward, 2 steps back, a steady regression into banality and pettiness. The reason that so many human transactions end in coruscating bitterness is that genuine goodwill among people is in short supply. But we can compensate for this deficiency through good manners, and create the appearance of goodwill. Those people who insist, as if it were a startling revelation, that manners are a form of hypocrisy, and that we should feel free to express what we truly feel, no matter what the occasion, are naive about human nature. There isn't enough natural good feeling to go around to keep social relations running smoothly, and we require the artificial sweeteners of manners. I am not of sweeter disposition than most people. If anything, the frail and the elderly have more cause for sourness than the young, but have less means of expressing their frustration. But I may seem to be kinder and more patient because I have learned to conserve my strength for the most trying situations, rather than fritter away my emotional energy on trifles and run around like a nervous wreck with a low tolerance for stress. Good manners are a result of knowing one's strengths and weaknesses, and through that self-knowledge one can devise clear, conscious policies about what constitutes the main chance in a wide variety of circumstances. It is more important to develop a general attitude of gracious respect for others than it is to swear by some weighty tome of codified behavior, which is then used as holy writ to condemn others for their infractions. Given an attitude of pragmatic respect for others, you may not do the perfect thing according to Debrett or Miss Manners, but you will likely do a much better thing than people normally do when they follow their emotional vagaries. To be considerate towards others requires no rules, but it does require a sharpened presence of mind. If this modest book contributes to such an exalted condition in readers, I will have the blissful satisfaction of knowing that what Jane Fonda's workout book does for flabby stomachs, my spiritual exercises have done for sloppy minds. I propose that we consider 3 examples of common mistakes in social relations, each involving one of the pitfalls of human misbehavior: the lust for power, the lust for money, and just plain lust. The common denominator in each case is that one party wants something from another and will stop at nothing to get it. Whenever we confront an unbridled desire, we are surely in the presence of a tragedy in the making. The first example is a variant of the issue we have already discussed, trying to find well-mannered ways to protect one's virtue when it is under siege. A friend of mine, an actress of even greater beauty than talent, complained to me that she is frequently exposed to compromising situations. Sex on the job, to be blunt, or employment in exchange for ravishment. Sexual discrimination is a more complex problem than simply receiving a warm offer from an overheated suitor. Indeed, feelings of affection are likely to be absent in sexually oriented power plays. Though sex may be the means of an employer's domination, something else is what he is really after, the submission and humiliation of a subordinate. This makes his motives even more impure and his designs even less acceptable than those of an average Lothario. Anyone with power, money, or influence who uses that power to pin down the powerless is a cad, of course, but something other than name-calling is required to keep his aggressiveness in check. My actress friend tells me that, in the arts, employment often hangs by a slender thread on the end of which dangles a proposition. The extremes for anyone in her profession are, either you want the part so badly you are willing to sleep with just about anyone, at least once, though my advice is don't start with the janitorial staff, or you don't want the part at all and aren't willing to trade off with anyone. Then there is the twilight zone. You would love to have the part, and the person with whom you are trying to ingratiate yourself isn't too objectionable, although you would rather be given the role without the obligatory role. If we are speaking of the man, whose minimal sense of decency we can only appeal to, it is up to him to let you know before you get the part that he intends to exact his pound of flesh, that while you may be a fearsomely magnificent Lady Macbeth on stage, you are expected to be as sexually subservient as the anti-heroine of The Story of O backstage. Even a cad should be willing to give sporting chance to his prey. He should then say, "I'll recommend you strongly for this role. I think we're going to be great friends," or whatever. This gives you a crawl space in which to maneuver. You are free to say, "I long for the role, but I would like to be considered a serious actress. I do hope that our personal relationship, whatever it may become, will not influence you or anyone else to whom you may recommend me." In an imperfect world that will do, everything is clear, and you have the choice. But your phantom of the theater may not say much of anything. He may recommend you strongly, and you may get the part, but then there comes an undignified aftermath in which he says, "Well, how do you think you got it? Why do you think I recommended you? You are a mediocre actress at best, and if it weren't for me, you wouldn't be on the stage. The least you can do in return is—" Caught, she then has to try to find a way of saying that she is grateful for any influence he may have used and purpose he has served, but that, from that point on, she will make her own way and will try to justify his faith in her, thus forestalling any further deterioration of what is already an undignified scene. She has to imply that her return for any influence he may have shown her is her undying gratitude. Then, virtue intact, she hot-foots it out. She must never suggest that she might pop into bed with him when she has no intention of doing so. Even when she arrives in his office and allows him to give her the most perfunctory kiss, she is then guilty of leading him on. As a part-time thespian, I am well aware that in the theater, kissing is a problem because everybody kisses everybody, so you have to make sure, if you are giving or receiving kisses in a promiscuous profession, that they are just osculatory tokens. My final advice to my actress friend, and anyone else who faces the perils of sex on the job, was that she should make it known tactfully and early to her prospective employer that she is happily involved with a lover or husband, whom she need never produce, and that she could not begin to contemplate sleeping around to advance her career. The world loves a lover, as the saying goes, and even the most unprincipled artistic director or producer is likely to respect, albeit grudgingly, not so much the rights of a woman in love, but the rights of another man. Such a subterfuge may not be a fail-safe method of preventing harassment by a sexually aggressive boss, but it should reduce both the number and the intensity of his lewd manipulations. It may well be that more skill is required to manage one's backstage ploys than is required for the onstage plays, but such is life in the theatre, sordid and venal like everything else.